This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good. So continuing with the Chovot Halevavot, Perek Gimel, with the book Shar Avodas Elokim, Serving God, the third chapter. And in Safaria, we're at 3:320, we said? 3:320. And in the book, we're at page 259. Good. Okay, so he's going through 7 ways or 7 aspects why, in addition to the seichel, to the mind understanding that our need to serve Hashem, there needs to be the Torah as the anchor for all of that. It needs to be based on the Torah. Okay, now he's going to say something here about 50.5% of the population, about women here, and it must be taken in context that women were, certainly in the time that he was writing this, were not educated, were not given education, and were therefore intellectually not as developed as men, not because they were any less intelligent, as we know today. We know today they're far more intelligent than men are, but because the tools were not given to them. Okay, with that disclaimer having been made. V'chamishi, and number 5. Ki hara Torah hi hakdama umavo el harat hasechel v'ra'aya alav. The motivation, the impetus, the push that comes from the Torah, that is a necessary prerequisite in order to get to the hara of the seichel, of the mind. Because a person, even from our youth, we need to be trained. We need to get ourselves onto that pathway. El chinuch, towards that chinuch, it means education, but it means the beginning of the path. Right? A chanukat habayit is the initiation of the house and leading it, and we want to initiate it and to lead it in a certain direction that it will go. That's what chinuch is. Chinuch is to educate that al pi darko, that will become the derech, the pathway of the person. Hello, Jesse. So we are on, if you're on Safaria, we're on 3:320. And if you're in the booklet, it's on page 258 or 259 Hebrew English. And the 5th reason why we need our sechlit is because a person, b'naruto, in our youth, we need this chinuch, managa, v'limnoa tavotav, to teach us, to guide us, to learn to control our desires at a point where on our own we would not know to control our desires. A story that I've told a number of times, this class, other classes, it's a great story. A mother was checking out of the grocery store, and her child is having this wild tantrum. I want. You know, they always put all the chocolates, right? So now I'm an adult, I can buy it whenever I want. But as kids, right, we're at the behest of our parents, and the kid's having this fit. I want the chocolate, and the mother whispers something in the kid's ear, and that's it. Right? Once the mother whispered in the ear of the child, the whole crying stopped. And other parents were amazed, right? And another woman called her over and said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't help notice what happened over the checkout line. Please, what are the magic words? How did you get that tantrum to just stop on a dime like that?" And she said, "Well, we're Orthodox Jews, and we only eat kosher." And I told my child, "It's not kosher." And at that point, the child knew that, why does a kid throw a tantrum? Well, sometimes it's just overload and out of control. Before you get to that point, it's a very, very, it's strategy, right? And at that point, the kid realized that no matter what, I'm not getting that candy. It ain't happening. All right. And therefore, right. So the Torah gives us this chinuch, this guidance in self-control, in not doing whatever I want to do at a very young age before our seichel really kicks in. El chinuch anagav v'limnoa tavotav, to hold back our tavot ad shechazek. And that way, until we reach that point where we become strengthened, v'yichavein, and our sichlo, will become focused. V'chein, and again, here's my disclaimer, right? People who were never educated, people who are either people who were never educated, he uses example as nashim, women, who back in the day that this was written, going back a good, and it's interesting, in many parts of the world today, girls don't get education, and certainly even going back in the Western world, going back 100 years, it was not as it is today, right? And now let's go back 800-900 years. Okay, right? So those who are either have not received much training in using one's mind, or those who are not, we say, not the brightest bulb. We have those also, right? Eina nimshachim, those who are not pulled achar hanagat haseichel, after the thinking and the understanding and the logic and of course we must view it in such a manner. And they chalishut isuro bahem v'kishuro otam, right? And therefore, those people who do not have this, right, because the connection between them and their seichel is very weak. Hitzrich hadochak lahanhaga benonit shisavluha, right, and therefore the seichel can't overcome their desires, and therefore they needed something that would be standing there as a middle ground between this uncontrollable desires and the seichel that will help to control that. And therefore, that is where the Torah comes in. V'lo yivatzer mehem la'amod ba. Otherwise, they would not be able to stand there. V'al kain, therefore, nosto ha'Torah al kitvei hayichul v'ha-rahut. Therefore, the Torah gives us, it's built upon these foundations of yichul, of hoping for good that will come, v'ha-rahut, and a trembling, a fear of consequences otherwise. And the Torah is filled with this, right? We say in the Shema every day, Vaya'im shamoa tishma'u el mitzvotai. If you, the second paragraph of the Shema, if you will listen to the mitzvot, the rains will come in their time, and all good will follow. Hishamru lachem, be careful, pen yifta levavchem, lest your heart will be seduced. You follow other gods, etc., etc. So therefore, we couldn't just wait for a person's seichel to reach that point. We needed this this basis that it all would be built upon. Umi she'eno mikatzer, and someone who does not short end, does not come up short b'chiyuvei ha'avodah, in one's obligations in the avodah and serving Hashem. Yeh b'madregat hachasidim hazakim. Such a person will reach the madrega of pure chasidim, pure righteous people. V'aroi ligamul ha'olam hazeh v'haba. Right? Even if one does not have this seichel to have gotten to it on his own, right? But through this training and through the Torah's guidelines, this person will merit the compensation in both this world and the next world. Umisha ola mimena, and someone who reaches even higher than that. El avodah shumi derech ha'arat hasechel, someone who reaches that point of I'm not doing it because I have to do it. I'm not doing it because the Torah commanded me to do it. I'm not doing it because otherwise, but if I do, I'll get all this reward. But he's doing it based on the ha'arat hasechel, right? A person's cognizance, awareness, recognition that God is doing so much for me. How can I'm waiting for an opportunity. We've mentioned many times, if someone is always helping you, you look for an opportunity. How can I reciprocate? Right? Thank you for allowing me to reciprocate. So someone who reaches that point, miderech ha'arat ha'sechel, yagia el madrigat ha'nevi'im, then one can reach the level of the nevi'im, of the prophets. Ubichirei elyon hachasidim, and those lofty, select chasidim. Vihi gmulo ba'olam hazeh, and a person will have the reward in this world, hasimcha, the joy, the pure, unadulterated joy, bimetikut avodat Hashem, in the sweetness of serving Hashem, of connecting to Hashem. Kamosha Amar Hanavi, like the Navi, the prophet Yirmiyahu said, Nimsu'u divarecha, I found your words when I'm in my state of nevuah, of prophecy. Nimsu dvarecha v'ochlam, and it's as if I was able to consume them, to eat them. V'yudvaracha li l'sason u'lesimchat levavi, and your words were to me as so brings so much rejoicing and simchat levavi, happiness of my heart, ki nikra shimcha alai, that you called your name on me. Hashem Elokai Tzvakot, Hashem, my God, the God of all hosts. Right? So the Nevi'im here are talking about this simcha, this absolute joy that one can have in the mitzvot. I don't think we're in the level of the Nevi'im, right? But nevertheless, there are times that we have this taste of this tremendous joy that we have in doing a mitzvah. V'amar yismach tzaddik b'Hashem, that tzaddik will rejoice in Hashem, in that sweetness of his mitzvot, his serving. V'chasa bo, on that he is chasa bo, that he is in God's charge, in God's protection. V'yithalalu kol yishrei leiv, right? And praised will be all of those of Yishrei Leiv. V'amar, and it says, so the first one was Yirmiyahu, second one was King David in Tehillim, this third one is also Tehillim, or Zarua la Tzadik ule Yishrei Leiv Simcha. Right? This is what we say many times as our introduction here in Beth Jacob to the Kol Nidre that we say, the pasuk, or Zarua is part of our daily davening, or Zarua la Tzadik, there is the light that is planted away for the righteous, or the Yishrei Leiv, and for those of a straight heart, there is this simcha. Right? So the reward is, there's the or that's planted away, and planted away, that would be a reference to Olam Haba, the world to come. Uli Yishrei Leiv, but right here in this world, what can we sense? We can sense that simcha. And it's interesting that we have so many of the different teachings that refer to it as an or zarua, and in all of those near-death experiences that people have, one of the common aspects they all have is the light, right? being drawn to this incredible pure light and saying that calling it light does not do it justice, right? But the closest thing that we have to it, right, is what we call light. But it's a whole different level. And actually, Rashi, one of the very first Rashis, when it says Ve'avdel Hashem, Hashem separated the light and the choshech. So Rashi brings from Chazal, from the sages, that this is the special creation light that was put away for the righteous in the world to come. Not the light that we have over here. It's a whole different sug, whole different world of light. Sorry? Not from the sun, correct. Correct. There's a famous story that there was a certain, I don't know if it was a Caesar, I forgot who it was, talking to one of the sages and saying, "Show me your God." I said, "Well, we can't show you God. God is it doesn't have any, and is non-corporeal, right? There's no substance. Or show me your God. Show me your God." He said, "Fair enough. I'll show you the God. Meet me tomorrow at the square here, noontime." Right? Next day they meet noontime. Right? He says, "So show me your God." He said, look up at the sun. Stare at the sun, and you'll see." The guy said, "Stare at the sun? You can't stare at the sun. You'll go blind." So they said, if you realize that you can't see one of the servants, one of the creations of God, then how do you think you could behold the brilliance of God Himself? So that is Gumulo ba'olam hazeh. That is the reward that one has in this world. Ugmulo la'olam haba, and the reward in the world to come. Lahagia el ha'or ha'elyon, to reach this, as we just discussed, this or elyon, this otherworldly light. Asher lo nuchal l'sapro v'lo lidmoto, that we cannot talk about it, we cannot compare it to anything. Right? As we always say, our language is limited to that which we experience in this world. We don't have words for that which is beyond our realm of experience. So lo nuchal l'sapro, there's nothing we could tell about it, v'lo lidmoto, or anything to compare it to. Very often when the sages in the Gemara and the Talmud, when they're discussing Olam Haba, the world to come, they refer to it as a fragrance, right? Because the fragrance is the least physical of our senses that we can sense, that we can take in. Kamo Shomar, as it says, this is the Navi in Zechariah, Im bidrachai telech, if on my path you will go, the im et mishmarti tishmar, and my guardings you will guard, the gam ata tadin et beiti, the gam tishmor et chatzeri, v'natati lecha mahalchim bein ha'omdim ha'eleh. And you will judge my house and keep my courtyard, so to speak. I will give you mahalchim. You will be walking amongst bein ha'omdim ha'eleh, amongst those who are standing there, right? Those are the angels. Now, fascinatingly, the angels are referred to as omdim, as those who are standing. We are referred to as a mahalech, as a person who's able to go, because a malach has no true free will, has no real challenges, and therefore it is stationary. It does not go anywhere. There's a certain resoluteness to that, and that's why when we say the Kedusha, we stand there with our feet together like a malach, angel-like, but in fact we are greater than the angels, or we can be greater than the angels, because we have challenges and we can overcome those challenges. We discussed that famous Gemara in Shabbos where Moshe is having the debate with the angels about receiving the Torah. And Moshe says, right, you don't have, right, don't murder, right? Do you have, don't covet? Do you have jealousy? Are you in business? Do you have, right? Do you deal with all these emotions that we human beings have, sometimes uplifting us, sometimes struggling with, right? And the Torah at its core is there to help lift us up. And therefore it said, you will be amongst these omdim. You will be mahalchim amongst these omdim. You human beings, mahalchim, can reach this point that you'll be amongst the angels and even will soon see supersede the angels from the third puzzle we're going to bring. But Amar, and it says in Tehillim, Ma Rav Tuvcha, how great, how abundant is the good, Asher Tzafanta Lire'echa, right, that you have set aside for those who fear you, and Tzafanta, putting it away, it's Tzafun, right, that's hidden away, that's talking about Olam Haba. Pa'alta l'chosim b'cha v'ach neged b'nei Adam. That's besides that which you have done for those who trust in you, neged b'nei Adam, in front of others, right here in this world, visibly. The Amar, and it says, the pasuk in Yeshayahu, Ayin lo rata elokim zulatecha yeaseh l'mechake lo. An eye, no eye has seen God besides you, that which you will do l'mechake lo, to those who wait for you. And this is a pasuk that the Gemara mentions at the very end of Brachos, where we hear about Rabbi Akiva being tortured to death for the crime of teaching Torah, and his flesh was being combed off of his body with these iron combs. And as he's doing that, right, he's saying Shema Yisroel Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The Gemara says the angels called out Zu Torah, V'Zu Sichara. Is this the Torah? Is this its reward? And Hashem tells them, quiet. Right? You don't know. Ayin lo rata, no eye, even the angels do not know the whole story, do not know what will be awaiting a Rabbi Akiva. Yes, Leah.
Maybe it's a dumb question.
No dumb question.
But how do the sages and all the wise authors and all them know about that light? Nobody has seen that and remained alive.
Correct.
Whoever are there don't come back.
So this is
about that?
Yes. So this is the Navi Yeshayahu. This is a prophecy that he's sharing with us. This idea that Ayin lo rata l'kim zulatecha, that no eye has seen it besides God. Right? That even the angels. You're right. Right? The only way that we can know such a thing is through prophecy, and that's why we have Yeshayahu, right? And we're quoting from the different Nevi'im, the different prophets. That's how we have this information. Yeah. V'hashishi, the sixth reason why we need to have this ha'ara of the Torah, this motivation, push of the Torah. Ki ha-Torah kalala inyanim. The Torah includes certain things. Lo yuchal hasechel levaer ofanei chiyuvam. It includes certain mitzvot that our mind would never imagine that there is such an obligation or such a prohibition, right? The mitzvah of para aduma is always an example of the red heifer to purify someone. What are you talking about? That's called a chok. A chok is a mitzvah that the reason for that mitzvah was not shared with us. You can't wear shatnez, a mixture of wool and linen in your garments. These are all mitzvot that the reasons were not shared with us. And as we've discussed many times, in a relationship, if my relationship with God was, I'm going to do that which makes sense to me, then in effect, I'm not serving God, I'm serving my mind, I'm serving my intellect. And therefore, the Torah specifically, Hashem specifically gives us mitzvah without telling us the reason. And I like to call it the commutative law of relationships. The commutative law of mathematics is if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. The community of law and relationships is you are important to me. This is important to you. Therefore, this is important to me. I see no reason why I need to do X, but it's important to someone who's very important to me, and therefore that becomes important to me. If Hashem is saying this is something that must be done, and in this case it's for your own benefit, then it becomes important to me. Since Hashem is important to me, and this is important for enough for Hashem to tell me to do this, it thereby becomes important. So first of all, the seichel will never get us to all of those mitzvot that are the chukim, that are beyond our seichel. Mitzvot hashmayot, the klalim misharshe asichliot, and also includes certain principles of mitzvot that even the seichel would obligate us in. And this is very interesting, right? As we live in a Torah world. Okay, right? In other words, incest, marrying one's closest of relatives, right? So I don't think that's allowed here. Can a person marry their mother or marry their father? I don't think that's allowed, right? Because this world has taken on this imprint of the Torah. Now, without Torah, so you'd say, well, that's logical. Well, one could have argued just as logically, how could one engage in an intimate relationship with anyone but their closest of relatives? That's something that's so close, so intimate. How can one do it with a foreigner, with a stranger? How can it be with anyone but? Right? But the Torah has given us, but the Torah is so imprinted in us that of course that becomes second nature. So even a lot of that which becomes second nature, we don't need the Torah to tell me that. Well, not necessarily. The Torah has given us that pathway. And that is because at the time, it's very interesting. We're told that after Matan Torah, the children of Israel were bochel mishpechotav. They were crying amongst their families, and the commentators explain they were crying about their families, because things that had been permitted, relationship that had been permitted for B'nai Noach, for Noahides, which we all were until the time of the Torah, now becomes prohibited, right? So it's not always so logical. And at that time, he says we were in a state of gover hatavot avehemiot alehem. We were at a time where our physical, more animalistic desires were very strong. The nechlashu midatam, the hakaratam me'avin habe menasichliot, and we were weak, chalash, weak in our minds and in our understanding, from understanding harbe, much of the sichliut, much of that logic. And at least with the Torah, they had this one pathway to follow. Until they would, right? So at least they would fulfill it based on the Torah commandment. And someone who had that strong seichel and hakara, wisdom and understanding, yitareh aleihen. So then that would then help motivate that person. V'yikablu al atzman lishnei hapanim. And then they would accept it from both ways. A, the Torah commands, and B, well, of course. Umishenechlash sichlo miderech yuvan. But someone whose seichel is weak in terms of accepting that obligation upon oneself, yikablu mitzad Torah b'lvad. At least I'll have it mitzad on the basis of the Torah. V'yeneheg behem minag hashma'uyut. and he will do that which that and will include also that which we have heard, that which the reasons have not been given for. By tabezot takana hakol, and that way everyone is in. It's not going to be exclusive, excluding any. As it says, Dracheha darchei noam, this is what we have written inside our Aron Kodesh. Dracheha darchei noam, her ways are ways of pleasantness. V'chol netivoteha shalom, and all the pathways are peace, and therefore everyone has the ability. It's there for everyone to plug into, regardless of their acumen, regardless of their nature. Vashvi'i, and number 7. Ki haTorah nagia eleh b'mitziut adam. The Torah came to us through a person, right? Through, of course, Moshe Rabbeinu. Sheyiru al yado ototum oftim, that Hashem showed us through Moshe as his agent these wonders, these signs. Kol b'nei adam shavim behem mitzad hagashatam, that everyone as one saw and was affected by that. V'lo yuchlu lidchotam, and were not able to deny it. V'yitbarer lehem mashu ba bo mishem habore b'mavsim murgashim v'sichliyim, and it became very clear that what Moshe was saying was in the name of this Creator through that which we ourselves experienced. V'zot tosefet, and this is in addition, alma shehutpu alav b'shorish habriya v'yitzira min ha'ara ha'sichliyut. And this is besides the very fact that we are born with this shoresh, this root in us, where we recognize that there is something far more than just this physical world. Yes, Esther.
So in the previous section, I was talking a little bit about if a person is not quite as intellectual as another, you still have the Torah, and that's the way you accept it. So when it talks here about how everybody saw at Matan Torah, they all perceived with their senses, did they perceive to the same level as?
That's interesting.
Because I know, like,
yeah,
some people perceive smells more acutely than others.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're making an interesting point, and I would agree with you. I agree with I think where you're going, that some people would perceive it on a different level than others, but nevertheless there was this certain ground, basic level that everyone experienced, and there was no one who didn't experience.
It's like, what happened?
Yeah. Did you hear anything? I didn't hear anything. I didn't see a mountain, right? So there was a certain base level that everyone was on. Yeah. Umishi yivchon tovot halakim alav. And when a person recognizes the good that Hashem has given, asher yishtaveh behen mikol bnei adam, the good that God's given to me as He's given to all of humanity. Yamin, right? I can walk, I can talk, I can see, right? I can breathe. Yamin b'chiyav kabbalot avodat elokim b'chol minei hasichliot. Then the person understands that he has this obligation to accept upon himself this service of Hashem using that seichel, that which the seichel, the mind, obligates. When one recognizes certain benefits, gifts that God has given to one's nation beyond the other nations, right? All of humanity has the seven mitzvot b'nei Noach, the seven Noahide mitzvot. Right? All those are perfectly logical. There's no voodoo over there. Right? Once I recognize that I'm part of a nation that has received certain gifts and certain responsibilities, then I understand that the mitzvot hashamiyot, then I also need to accept upon myself those other mitzvot besides the other nations have. And if my tribe has received certain gifts beyond the general Jewish nation population, besides Shiftei Sharamo, the other tribes, Kikahuna or Levi, like a Kohen or a Levi, then I understand, well, then I'm going to have certain special, unique mitzvot as a Kohen, as a Levi. And that's where you find, okay, Tinsa Torah, Kahuna Arba Avesrim, the Kohanim have 24 special, unique responsibilities, mitzvot, Keneged Arba Avesrim Tovot. And the Torah gives them 24 gifts, 24 bonuses, so to speak, that we give to the Kohanim. That God has provided for the Kohanim, which are the 24 matnot kahuna, gifts that are given to the Kohanim. And following with this further, anything that God has given you beyond what other people might have received, then one needs to take upon himself a sense of obligations and responsibilities more than other people. Together with the general responsibilities, according to one's ability and recognition to thank God. For that which God has given you, specially of this special good. And your showing appreciation for that will be a cause for that continued gift to come your way, and even more to come your way. Right? And then one will, right? And that will help one's avoda going forward, and then we'll want to repay that going forward. And not to be like one that the prophet Hosea said, I gave all that kesef, all that monetary wealth, and what did they do? Asul Baal. They used that to make the idols of Baal. And someone who is shorts, so to speak, in their avoda, that it's not commensurate to that special good that God has given, that will cause a lacking, right? Then that which your family has gotten, right? The larger group, and then even Mashiach Debo Amo, right? And then, right, rejecting that which my nation, as a nation, Torah, one will then desert the Torah. And then already the sichliot, those logical things. Well, who says it's logical? Who says that makes sense? Right? There's relative morality. Who are you to impose your view on me? And everything goes. And then a person can sink down to a level lower than a normal human being. Animals will have a better understanding of how to exist in this world than him. Like the pasuk says in Yeshayahu, and once again Yeshayahu, Yada Shor Koneo, the Chamor Avus Ba'alav, an ox knows who owns it, and a donkey knows the food trough of its master who feeds it. Yisroel lo yada, amilos banan. But Israel has sunk to the level they don't know. They don't recognize this. That they will be lost, they will dissipate. So it is a serious obligation that we have over here, and it's all based on this basic principle of acknowledging and appreciating when someone, or in this case, God is doing so much for us, that we need to look for ways to show that, acknowledge, and to reciprocate. I think we have our 99 minute stuff now. Okay. Good night. Good night, Jesse. Oh, where are we in Safaria? Oh, good. 3-4. That's easy. 264. Cheryl? 213. Good. Beautiful. Thank you.
I'm taking that.